शून्यवात् पश्यते देशतारिणे ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितमेन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टां स्थापितमेन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्ता कांचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नित्यानंद अवधूतेन्दु वसुध प्राणवल्लभ जानव जीवितपति कृष्ण प्रेम प्रद प्रभु पद्मावती सुत श्रीमान सचिनंदन पूर्वजः भावोन्मत्त जगत्त्राता भक्त गौर कलेवर। नमो नमो अनिरुद्धाय ऋषिकेश इंद्रियात्मने नमः परमहंसाय पूर्णाय निवृतात्मने स्वर्ग स्वर्ग द्वाराय नित्यं सुचीतले नमः। नमः हिरण्यवीर्याय चतुर्होत्राय शान्तवे। So I think we stopped at verse 3:14, right? So we said all living bodies subsist on food grains which are produced from rains, and rains are produced by performance of yajna, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. So here, the last week we gave an example that yajna essentially means sacrifice, and it is a sacrifice according to time, place and circumstances. Desha Kala Patra. So the sacrifice that is performed in Kali Yuga, based on our ability, based on the time, based on the circumstances of Kali Yuga, which are quite challenging, the recommended process of sacrifice is Nama Yajna. It is a chanting of the holy names of the Lord. That is a recommended process. So now we have two situations. We spoke last week saying when one keeps Krishna in the center and performs his duties according to Varna and Ashrama while maintaining Krishna in the center, and also performing sacrifice in the form of chanting the holy names of the Lord, propagating the holy names of the Lord, assisting in the mission of the propagation of the holy names of the Lord. All of these are wonderful forms of sacrifice. It is the recommended sacrifice for this age. When one performs such a sacrifice, then the prescribed duties produces results. In other words, whatever is required for us to continue to subsist, for us, whatever is required for us to be able to serve and for us to be able to progress in the mission of life is made available. Okay. One has to understand it contextually. So there are those who perform sacrifices, and those sacrifices in the rural areas, based especially with the farming community, with the agricultural base, those sacrifices are essential for them to be able to produce rains, because without rains there cannot be any subsistence in the rural community. And that particular quality that they have to produce rains makes them dependent on Krishna. So a rural community is especially well geared for people to be able to engage in Varna an ashrama. Whoever has certain propensities, they engage in such activity and they subsist based on that activity. While they subsist based on that activity, they are also able to recognize that everything is being provided by the Lord. We don't realize it while we are here in the city, but it's quite the opposite while you are in the rural areas. In the city, when you go and you buy things from the supermarket, you don't even realize that it has been produced because of the mercy of the Lord. Vegetables, rice, so on and so forth. How many times does it cross in our mind that there is Krishna who basically has facilitated this produce? We are busily looking at the prices, aren't we? We are looking at quality, we pick the right kind of vegetables, and that is it. Because our entire concentration is completely on a different mood. But then in a rural area, you are completely conscious because you are dependent. You know there's a controller, and you understand that such a controller produces rains, and because of which, we subsist. And accordingly, based on the system that is being followed, they perform sacrifices to be able to reach that situation. Last week I gave you the example of highlighting that this is the Yuga Dharma, this is the Yajna for this particular age. I gave an example of Srila Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj in Andhra. There was a village, and in that village and the surrounding townships, several villages, there was drought for several years or several seasons. There was no rains, and the farming community, literally they were completely collapsing because of the fact that they could not sustain their profession. They could not manage. There were suicides because they used to borrow and they used to sow seeds, and then they had to basically cultivate, and then based on the harvest they had to return the money that was being borrowed. So now that entire cycle collapses, the farming community is overburdened with debt. So they were really in a very dangerous situation. And at that time, Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj was a great instrument of Krishna. He reached there and he told them, all of you gather together and we will chant the holy names, and this being the Yuga Dharma, this being the Yajna that has to be performed, you will see results. So everyone in the adjoining villages gathered together and everyone chanted the holy names for almost an hour. He is an amazing personality, he is an amazing Kirtaniya, if you ever heard him. Have you heard him? Yeah, when he sings, he's a very powerful Kirtaniya. So he sang so amazingly, he led Kirtan. Within 1 hour, there was a downpour. The entire season shifted because Krishna's servants decided to bless that place. See, there's also a karmic shift that occurs when we bring in Krishna. Just as much as any time you prostrate before the deities, any time you serve the deities, any time you engage in any form of devotional service, the lines on your palm change. Practically, your destiny or what was ordained, your prarabdha karma, is dramatically changing every time you come before the deities and even clap your hands in kirtan. It changes when you offer lamps, when you offer agarbatti, when you offer flowers, when you chant the holy names. You don't realize it because it is imperceptible, it is not very clear, but it dramatically changes. See, given the fact that our viewpoints and how we think has dramatically changed in the last 2 years, 3 years, since we have come and associated with Krishna consciousness, this thinking process changing is because consciousness has changed. How else could the thinking process change? And why has consciousness changed? Because karma, which has been implanted in our hearts for many, many lifetimes, has been uprooted. And once the dirt from our heart, Cheto Darpanamarjanam, occurs because of the chanting of the holy names, automatically we are able to make progress, and there's a shift in our thinking process. And thinking leads to, what's the next step? Action. And action leads to habits. And habits are character. The habits a person has defines the character of the person. And character is culture. That's the culture you operate under. There's no such thing as culture without all these fundamental steps, and it starts with a shift in consciousness. And the shift in consciousness fundamentally brings forth these wonderful qualities. Right. So now we understand that why is Krishna mentioning these activities? What is the context in the third chapter? Go back to the context of the third chapter. What is the discussion here? It is Karma Yoga. And what is the essence of Karma Yoga? Give me some principles. Let us see how many of you recollect what we've discussed so far. We are in verse 15, and I pretty much probably repeat myself 100 times on certain aspects just to make sure that the point gets driven home. So let's see if I hear what are the points, the main focal points that we have focused on, kind of dwelled upon.
Krishna is not going to interfere, and we always have to keep Krishna in the center in whatever we do.
Very good. Krishna does not interfere, and we always have to keep Krishna in the center and engage in our day-to-day life. There's one more principle here. Why doesn't Krishna interfere?
Because he doesn't want to, he cannot change the karma.
Well, he can change anything he wants.
There's no pure love. There's no chance for pure love.
So there's no chance for love if one is being forced to love. Yes. Huh?
He gives us a choice.
Because he gives us a choice. We have free will. So he wants us to exercise free will. And again, it comes back to the principle of love. Because you don't want to force someone to love you. So you're given free will so that he can act accordingly. So there is one more underlying principle. The principle is we make choices. That is the problem. Karma Yoga is all about we have made choices and we are then trying to fit Krishna in the center. So it's critical for us to understand the dangers of planning. So it's required that the entire thought process involves Krishna. Consciousness at a deep-rooted level involves Krishna, where we start thinking that I need to perform something, I need to perform an activity. I am a servant of Krishna. How can I execute Krishna consciousness, keeping him in the center? The thinking process has to evolve. I need to do this. How will it affect my Krishna consciousness? I should not be doing this because it may affect my Krishna consciousness. Right? So we start considering, is this activity going to help me read better? Is this activity going to help me chant better? Is this activity going to help me associate and serve better? When we start considering these pillars of mercy, we automatically take a decision which is favorable, and that decision is considered to be a decision taken with full cognizance that Krishna is in the center. I want to make a decision. Now Krishna provides intelligence, Buddhi Yoga. He provides intelligence under such circumstances when we want to keep him in the center and we want to take decisions. He says, I will provide you with intelligence.
Buddhi, when you say we make choices, other side we say that we have no control, we act as per, our karmas, because even though whatever we do, that is already defined, that has to be happen. So how can two things exist together? Yeah. Contradictory principles. Actually, they are contradictory, but they do coexist in harmony. Because we have free will and we have destiny. It's a mixture. If you consider 100% being our total sphere, okay? Of that, you can say, I'm giving an example, just an example. 30% you can say is free will, 70% is destiny. So that 30% you can change. Free will, essentially, you didn't have a choice in deciding who your parents were. That's karma. Right? You don't have a choice in deciding how you look. We don't have a choice in deciding our propensities and so on and so forth, in the sense that there is some fundamental makeup which is not your choice. Right? You don't have much of freedom there. However, there is immense freedom in terms of decision making for us to be able to change what essentially is our destiny. So let us assume that you want to leave this place and you want to go home. Right? Now you have a bunch of choices on which route you want to take.
You have a choice on whether you want to go directly home, you want to visit someplace else. You had a choice today on being here or going elsewhere. These are choices. You're not being forced. Force by Krishna comes in at a time when we don't need it. Force by Krishna comes in when a devotee has completely given up his free will, he has surrendered. So now the devotee is saying, I am fully surrendered, Krishna, I don't want this free will, control me, you are my controller, do everything, whatever is pleasing to you, let this be done. Right? And then Krishna is saying, you are completely free, you are completely free, you are completely free, do what you want to please, he has given you as much freedom as you want. So such devotees, for instance, Narad Muni, just giving an example, there is no time, there is no barrier, nothing for him to visit anywhere. There is 100% freedom because he is 100% surrendered. Do we realize? So what I am trying to say is that this freedom that we have is to be used. We do have freedom. The more and more we surrender, the freedom becomes more. It is like a well-behaved child. A child who is well-behaved is allowed a lot more freedom than a child who is erratic and self-destructive. So the more and more we surrender and the more and more we go closer to the original position, the more and more we understand how to keep Krishna in the center while taking decisions. Krishna will extend freedom because he knows we wouldn't hurt ourselves to that freedom. There will be great freedom. Right? But the internal mood of the devotee who has such great freedom is they would do nothing unless Krishna tells them to do it, in the sense that their proximity and their communion with Krishna is that I will do whatever Krishna says. There would be no other question, nothing else. But immense freedom. Anything can be accomplished. You see, you cannot, this is about empowerment, right? Empowerment essentially means that we have the ability given by God to accomplish something that we don't have a capacity to accomplish. We simply do not have the capacity to accomplish something, but then God gives that ability. He empowers. Right? So for devotees who are pure and whose decision making is completely revolving around keeping Krishna in the center, they can think of nothing else, who have surrendered their free will because they don't need free will, they are completely surrendered to Krishna because they are instruments in his hands, they can accomplish anything because they are direct instruments. It's almost like your hand, you can make it do whatever you want it to do based on your capacity because the hand has surrendered. But suppose your hand starts resisting and does not allow you to act and has an independent mind, then such a hand is very difficult to control. And what do you do with such a hand? You really can't do much because now the hand is behaving erratically. That's the challenge. So there's a big distinction between freedom and being confined to a destiny. There's a big distinction between when freedom is given fully and how devotees use freedom.
Prabhuji, just now you told that we have a choice that whether to come here or to go somewhere else. Suppose if we start from home to come here, but somehow like if cops come, so it takes over half an hour, we miss the class, then what can we say that?
It's a combination. You made an attempt, right? But ultimately you have to realize this. You are bound, as I said, through your freedom too. You have freedom to act, but it does not mean that the results are going to come exactly how you want it to be.
The results are not in
Those results are not in your hands because you can make plans, you can do wonderful things, but ultimately the results are controlled by the Lord because they belong to Him in place. So we are not entitled to those results. So you are talking about results. I am talking about action. Two different things.
This was a very confusing topic and I had elaborated for like 1 hour, 2 hour discussion just on this, what is karmic reaction, what is free will. But I learned that, and was told to me was that when we are talking about the free will, it does not make that it can come or it is in your control right now. Or maybe like you have a choice to come here or not to go, or not to come here. Is my free will whether I come here or not. And what was told to me that what has to happen in this life is already decided. Whatever you desire in this life may set up the bed for the life coming in. Because that is what is free will is.
No, I disagree with that position. I disagree with that position because that is not free will. It has not been decided. Free will is quite distinct from a principle of karma. Free will is you have the ability to act. You have the ability to act, you have the ability to take decisions. The extent to which you can take decisions is quite muted. It differs from person to person. Prabhupada gave a wonderful example, a simile. He says, stick a pole in the middle of the ground, grab a rope and tie a cow to that rope. Right? Now, how many of you will say that the cow has freedom? The cow has freedom to the extent of the radius.
That's it.
The radius of the rope gives the cow freedom because the cow can move around the perimeter based on that particular measure, the radius. Correct? However, the cow is not free to go beyond the parameter set by the rope. It cannot. Now, that particular rope which is given and the length of the rope differs from individual to individual based on their capacity, based on their qualities, based on their elevated consciousness. The rope can become lengthened and the rope can become shortened based on our activities in this life. We are born with a certain length and that can be extended or that can get shortened. If that scope is not there, right, then we would be quite incarcerated. What are we talking about in Krishna consciousness? Let me explain this principle and then we'll go into that. Now, that particular fact of the length of the rope is predetermined when we are born as to how long that rope is. To that effect, I agree that it is predetermined in this life as to how long that rope is going to be, unless there is a sadhaka. Every accomplished astrologer, especially one who is very shastric, they would never attempt to predict the longevity of a Vaishnava, dedicated Vaishnavas. That is completely in the hands of Krishna. You can predict for others and be accurate. Even astrology as a science, they would not, because they understand that once there is devotional service, that particular rope, that length and everything starts getting controlled by Krishna. It's completely other in the current life itself. So the point which I'm trying to make here is that you are born with a certain amount of freedom, which is your free will. You have the ability to extend that freedom far beyond the capacity that you think you have. Or you have the ability to incarcerate it. You have people who are born free, supposedly. Right? They are constrained by a rope. And what is that rope? That rope is their tamasic consciousness. A tamasic consciousness, a person born with very tamasic consciousness, acts within a very short boundary of freedom because he is imposed on by that particular quality. And he acts in such a manner that he kills someone and goes back into jail. It even more curtails his ability to act because it is there, the tamasic freedom. But now, that particular tamasic consciousness which is forbidding him from extending free will, which is free will. What is free and what is freedom by definition? Freedom is complete freedom from body consciousness. More one is conscious, the more they are tied to the body, the more not free they are. Right? So someone who is very tamasic, his body consciousness is so high and he's almost like in an animal state that his amount of freedom is like an animal's freedom. How much can the animal do? The animal will act according to the body it is in. A tiger will pounce. A snake cannot distinguish between a 3-year-old and a 30-year-old man. It will strike out. Because that is nature. They are in such bodies. Similarly, lower consciousness means you are in that body and you are forced to act in that kind of consciousness because you have repeatedly put yourself in that consciousness. And the more you act in low consciousness, it incarcerates you even further. It starts degenerating you into animal life. But the more you start moving forward from there and coming up, you get liberated from this body. So freedom that we are born with, right, is the level of body consciousness one is having. but they have the ability to cleanse their heart of impurities, elevate their consciousness, and achieve a greater level of freedom. What is a greater level of freedom? A greater level of freedom is recognizing that we are not this body. That is complete freedom. One who is suffering from hunger, one who is suffering from thirst, one who is suffering from sex desire. These are incarcerations of the body. These are signs of imprisonment. Right? Because the body is making a demand, you are situated in the body and you are forced to cater to the demand because you are not free yet. For one who is completely free from the consciousness of the body, he is not imprisoned in this body. There are no constraints. He is fully free. He has 100% free will in that sense. Now, another definition, one who is completely pure person, whatever they desire happens because their consciousness is Vrindavan consciousness. Anything you desire to please Krishna in Vrindavan will manifest itself. A tree is not bounded in Vrindavan to produce only apples. Someone desires that I want to give mangoes to Krishna, it will produce mangoes. There is no constraint in the spiritual sky. Similarly, a person who is highly situated, someone who is completely free of body consciousness, who is pure devotee of Krishna, for them, manifesting things is not a big deal. You read in the Srimad Bhagavatam, elevated yogis, very powerful yogis like Kardama Muni, he produced an entire flying planet for sense enjoyment with his wife, right? Before they wanted to bring forth a progeny. He produced an entire flying castle or a palace, whatever. A yogi, he can manifest a planet out of his will. So what is the amount of freedom which is being given to such personalities that they can create planets? Can you imagine how much freedom has been given? Right? They turn people into stones by curses. What is the level of freedom these sages have? That they are so potent that they can transform matter in any manner they want. This is freedom to a large extent. Okay? So the point which I am trying to make here is that we are born with free will, we are given freedom, and we are making use of freedom by associating with Krishna. Krishna does not want to force us. So our freedom is not curtailed in this birth. It is not limited. We are born with something. Let us say, for example, we are born with 30% freedom, 70% destiny. That mix can be changed. That 30% can be used to manipulate the remaining 70% to achieve whatever we need in terms of Krishna consciousness. We can do that. People do it with ordinary ritualistic activities. Ordinary mundane astrology, right? Mundane astrology in the sense people want to achieve mundane desires. They manipulate the so-called destiny. Those who can manipulate the destiny, they have freedom for them to be able to go meet the right astrologer. The right astrologer has to be in the time frame for him to be able to give the right prescription. They're able to go and then act upon it, do the mantras, get the results. They're able to do so. If that possibility was not there, that we can alter what we can, our destiny, then what is the point in preaching? If nothing can change, then why preach? Everybody has to go with whatever they have. Why bother telling people that you can change? Because our actions are based on consciousness, and consciousness is based on previous karma. That's what this is. If we cannot alter our present and our past karma, then why bother? Right? That's the point.
The understanding which I got of the discussion was that we can alter, but those changes would get in effect in the coming lives, not in the current life. So
I disagree with this
that
position
was
too.
I got the understanding.
Maybe the understanding was that way.
So
That's fine. I disagree with that because if the changes were going to occur in subsequent lifetimes, then there is no such thing as achieving Krishna Prema in one lifetime, which is Srila Mahaprabhu's and Srila Prabhupada's blessing, the benediction which has been given to us. The concept of Jivan Mukta, someone who is liberated while being in this body, will simply not exist if that person does not have the ability to be able to achieve whatever he wants even in one lifetime. It's possible. we should not be constrained by that. That's the point. Okay? Because there's a lot of confusion on this topic.
Yes.
But I'm just trying to clarify as much as I can. We will discuss further in further future chapters. But for now, I just want you to understand that the process that we are in is about shifting karma. If you do not have karmic shifts, you will not be able to shift your consciousness. The perception change in consciousness, change in habits are coming because karma has changed. If not, there's no question. Whenever we chant, whenever we engage in devotional service, karma is being shifted. Otherwise, there will be no progress.
So you said the actions are based on the consciousness, and the consciousness is your previous karma.
You're right. Mhm.
So by shifting consciousness, you can change karma, or is that?
We completely uproot our past actions. We completely uproot the reactions that are a part of our past actions. We throw them away. See, what is our original state? What is our original state? Jive Swarup Hoy, Nitya Krishna Das. We are eternal servants of Krishna in Vrindavan. Every step is a dance. Every step is a dance. Every speech is a song in Vrindavan Dham. That is our original position, right? But then what do we think of ourselves right now? You think you're a man. I'm not saying you're not. You are. Okay? You think you are a man. You think you are an Indian, right? You are educated in a certain way. You have a certain profession, right? Married, and so on and so forth. Staying here in America. Now you have several identities that we think of, right? But imagine a situation, the idea of being Krishna's servant and the identity of being Krishna's servant, which is the core of our existence, is not spontaneous. It is not in the forefront until we get completely purified, right? That understanding that we are pure Krishna's servants and every time we act does not come through, right? Now, when that comes through, what it essentially means, it negates the impressions put in our heart for several lifetimes. I'll just explain this. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sings in the Sikshashtakam, Cheto Darpanam Arjanam. Cheta is Chitta, consciousness. Every lifetime, us being in one kind of a body in a lifetime, leaves an impression on our consciousness. It is like taking a paintbrush and putting a stroke on a white sheet of paper. So we have a white canvas, and on the canvas, every lifetime, you are dipping into different varieties of paint and you're putting a few strokes here and there. Right? These are impressions. Now, several years back, in the riots that took place in Delhi, after Indira Gandhi's death, there was a devotee who was visiting Delhi, and he was in Delhi railway station just on the day when Indira Gandhi died, or the next day or whatever, when the riots were going on. And he was very unfortunate. He noticed the decapitation of a Sikh by a mob. And seeing that incident, that gory incident, left such an impression on his heart. To this day, 25, 30 years later, he still wakes up in the middle of the night seeing those aspects. These are impressions that are in the chitta. If we see something which is very graphic, for instance, violence, or something to do with the lower tendencies of human life, it does not leave our consciousness for a long time. Even when you sit and you pick up your japa and you're chanting your japa, it suddenly appears in your mind from nowhere. Oh, I'm trying to shake it off. It suddenly appears in your mind. How is it appearing in your mind? Because it has left a tamasic impression on your chitta. The consciousness has been marred. Right? People go through experiences in their childhood. Those experiences influence them in their adulthood. The experiences, if they are very bitter, it produces a certain kind of personality. And they act based on it because they have certain scars. These are impressions on the consciousness. What are these? These are impressions on the consciousness. Some karma has taken place. We are not able to shake it off. It is like a very black spot on a white piece of cloth. And no matter how hard you wash it, there are certain impressions that a dark spot was on. Right? It doesn't leave you. And it keeps influencing you over several lifetimes. Now imagine our existence today is a sum total of millions of lifetimes. You can imagine the state of our consciousness today. It's a sum total of millions of lifetimes. It's an aggregate. Being an aggregate, we are basically in a position where we act according to that aggregate. Does it make sense? Millions of lifetimes of actions have left impressions on the chitta. As I said, this canvas, which is quite wide, was painted in different strokes over millions of lifetime, and today we are looking at not a white canvas. It was initially multicolored. Now it has just become very dark, because every lifetime there has been some impression which has been created. Now you are experiencing life through a filter of that canvas. Some people have a phobia of crossing over high bridges even if they are in a car, right? Acrophobia. Some people are claustrophobic. Some people are phobic of water. As they go into water, even little water or something, they get overwhelmed. They cannot be in water. Some people experience that. You go into the shower, which kids basically, when you're growing up, my brother, for instance, even now he has a problem going under the shower. Now, why is it that we have such phobias? Some people have it, some people do not. And it can be said, it can be researched, astrologically it was proven as well, that, and through certain psychiatric techniques it was seen, that the people who had a fear of heights, when they regressed them, they actually had death occur to them in a previous lifetime by falling from a very high place. That leaves such a mark on consciousness that they carry those impressions to subsequent lifetimes. So that's who we are. We are a substance, an aggregate of millions of lifetimes of experiences, and we view this particular lifetime through such experiences. Right? Now, our actions are also guided by such experiences. Some people are afraid, some people are not, some people are outgoing, some people are introverted. All these experiences are affecting us. We are not normal, right? Because we are situated where the entire processing platform, which is your canvas, which is your chitta, is completely marred with all kinds of wrong impressions. When you chant the holy names, when you engage in devotional service, when you serve the devotees, when you serve the Lord, when you read, when you shift your consciousness, you are basically scraping off these impressions. You are bringing back the white canvas. When the canvas becomes completely white like a mirror, you can see who you are. And that time you see that you have a relationship with Krishna. Right?
So, Prabhuji, if we are carrying the impressions, million of years, then probably 2 lifetimes may not be enough to wash everything. Does it mean like we have to have another millions of lifetimes,
Just to wash?
Just to wash?
You'll have to work very hard in washing. Then you can clear it out. You don't have to have millions of lifetimes. The holy names of the Lord are potent to uproot prarabdha, that which is manifested in this life. The holy names are potent to uproot aprarabdha, karma that is still remaining to be executed, and any other impression, subtle or gross, from our consciousness. So that's the process. If it is sincerely taken up, it can completely uproot everything. Right?
Even sometimes things people who do everything keeping Krishna in the center, even things don't happen favorably. So what is that called? Is that karma?
Of course, that is also a part of karma. But then how do we know whether what exactly they were supposed to do? That's a different topic as to why good people suffer. Actually, that's a different topic. That's a different topic. It can come as a matter of we can go deeper into it as to the nature of suffering. As to why do we see someone who is apparently leading a good life. Apparently. You've got to have a benchmark. Everybody thinks they're going to heaven. Everybody. So we've got to have a benchmark on what is apparent, what is right, who has led a sadhu life. We've got to have some benchmark. Even those people, you see, they go through certain incidents in their life which are pretty fascinating. Why would Jesus Christ have to be crucified? Why would Jesus Christ have to be crucified? I mean, such an elevated soul, such a great personality, why would he have to be crucified? So there are certain aspects to it as to why there is suffering, apparent suffering, at least in our understanding. Okay, we'll go into it in a separate session. I don't want to detract from the topic that we are discussing here. But just to kind of give you a flavor, the whole process is for us to be able to uproot aprarabdha, uproot the bijas, uproot prarabdha, uproot everything, throw it away. Because only if you do that will you be able to visualize the relationship that you have with the Supreme Lord. That is the process. And the holy names are potent. They are the most potent. They are Krishna himself. So they can uproot all of this. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I was reading that there are 10 offenses while you are chanting Mahamantra. So one of the offenses we should not talk about the glory of holy names to the unfaithful people. I mean, Shraddha is many. So can you kindly expand on this? Because if we do this, then how we will tell people about
Basically, it means we do not explain the glories of the holy names, because glories of the holy names, that's Krishna himself. There are different levels you can go into in terms of being able to share the glories of the holy name. Right, Harinam. So it does not mean that you do not chant and distribute on the streets when we do Nagar Sankirtan. We are chanting the holy names of the Lord. There are many people who hear, some of them absorb and they get transformed, some of them reject, some of them curse, some of them become offensive, they become agitated. There are many people who react in different ways. So that particular offense essentially means that you do not go and explain the glories of the holy name to someone who is envious, someone who is unfavorable. You don't explain that. But Vaishnavas do that anyways, not so much being offensive to the holy names, but they want to pass it on, they want to pass on the mercy. To what extent are you going to explain the glories of the holy names? The most intimate pastimes of Krishna are the holy names, because they are Krishna himself. You don't explain those. You don't explain the glories, but you can distribute. You can do Nagar Sankirtan. That is not an offense. That's what it means. Right. So, we were on verse 14 and we never started anything else. Let's go to verse 15 quickly. Karma brahmodbravam viddhi.
Karma brahmodbhavam viddhi.
Brahmakshara samudbhavam.
Brahmakshara samudbhavam.
Tasmat sarvagatam brahma.
Tasmat sarvagatam brahma.
Nityam yagne pratishtitam.
Nityam yagne pratishtitam.
Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas.
Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas.
And the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
And the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Consequently,
Consequently,
the all-pervading transcendence
the all-pervading transcendence
is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice.
is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice.
So regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So performing sacrifice essentially is to please Krishna. He is the Yajna Purusha, he is the Yajnapati. There is no one else who can receive oblations. They are directly connected to him because the Vedas themselves manifest through Krishna. Now, why did Krishna give the Vedas? Krishna produced and gave the Vedas to the mankind so that they would be able to follow the strictures and make progress. They have demands because a man, woman, child, they have desires. Now, you can either act on those desires like animals do, or you can act on those desires in a regulated, shastric manner. So the Vedas were provided so that one could act on their desires based on certain prescriptions. By doing so, that would become an act of sacrifice. By doing so, they would move forward and progress further in life. They would elevate themselves gradually. So this is the fact, right? So that's the statement which is being made here, because the whole purpose is for us to be able to move forward towards Krishna consciousness, move forward from one stage of consciousness to the other. And the Vedas are non-different from Krishna. So one who is following Krishna consciousness is indeed following Vedas, because the conclusion of the Vedas is to ultimately reach Krishna. They are non-different. Let's read 16. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayatiha yah agayur indriyaramo mogam partha sajivati. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice, thus established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life full of sin, living only for the satisfaction of the senses. Such a person lives in vain. What is living in vain? Living in vain means the end result is shunya. No, it's practically useless. The end result is shunya, living in vain. So someone who is not living a regulated life according to the Shastras, right, is living in vain, because he again has to come back in a different lifetime and go through the same process again. You do not live in vain if you take up the principles given in the Vedas, which is to keep Krishna in the center and act upon those principles and be able to make progress. Right? Every one of you is employed, and when you are employed, I am sure you are considering that I should be promoted. Many years pass and there's no promotion, the person starts stagnating, they feel frustrated, they want to leave the organization. Okay? We consider it working in vain. I'm not getting a raise, I'm not getting promoted, what am I working for? Working in vain. Similar situation in life, when one is not taking up Krishna consciousness, one is not keeping Krishna in the center, one is living in vain because he is not getting promoted. There is no promotion. He's getting demoted because his consciousness is falling. So why are you living? It's just a life which is just, it's like an animal life. You go from one body to the other, there's no consideration. Okay, it goes on. So Krishna says very clearly, if you're not going to be following the principles of the Vedas, which is keeping Krishna in the center, you are living in vain. It's practically useless. Verse 17. Yastva atmaratir eva syad atmatriptascha manavaha atmani eva cha santushtas tasya karyam na vidyate. But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Now, how can one take pleasure in the self?
If your consciousness is very clear, very pure, then you can have self-realization, Atma-darshan.
So, when consciousness is elevated and you're engaging in the service of Krishna, keeping him in the center, then automatically the self is very pleased. Right? So, when we go for service, no one pays us, right? There is no remuneration, but there is a certain deep satisfaction. That deep satisfaction of having served the Lord is the pleasure experienced by the self. At the highest level, one directly serves Krishna and experiences the greatest pleasure. One is able to have his darshan. One is able to see him. One is able to hear him, speak to him. And such a person experiences the greatest pleasure. Right? At the highest level. So that is pleasure of the self. The self, the soul, has no other pleasure other than being able to serve Krishna. The soul cannot have any other propensity for pleasure other than being able to serve Krishna. There is no other propensity. It cannot. That's the real nature. That's the real nature. Right. So, but for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, dedicated himself to being a servant of the Lord, and who is satisfied in the self only, absolutely no desire for pleasure from the body or the mind, because he is completely satisfied from within. He has absolutely no pursuit of pleasure externally. For him, there is no duty. Why isn't there any duty for such a person? Why is there duty and why isn't there duty?
Secondary duty. Talking about secondary.
Why would you think there is duty?
Secondary duty is to support the primary duty. So from primary duty is accomplished and the rest. Duty is karma. Duty is karma.
Because of the fact that we are not inert, we are conscious beings. We have been sent into this particular planet, we are in this particular planet, we are in this situation. We are not inert, we feel like acting. So there is the process of eating, there is the process of sleeping, depending on social conditions, mating, defending. When these activities are happening and we are wanting pleasure because we are pleasure seekers by nature, right? We are accumulating reactions. So one who is seeking pleasure from the body, one who is seeking pleasure in this world, needs to do it in a regulated manner. So there is duty, right? What do we define? For instance, sex life. Illicit sex is a pillar of sin. Why is it a pillar of sin? Because there is no responsibility or duty associated with that act. So if one desires to have pleasure in this world, there should be duty associated with it. But for one who has absolutely no connection with this body for pleasure, he has no duties as defined for others, because he is serving the Lord. Does this make sense?
So all secondary duties have some enjoyment of the body associated with them?
Not necessarily, but what I am trying to say is that we are pleasure seekers by nature. We should keep the concept of secondary and primary out of this, just so that you'll be able to understand it. We are pleasure seekers by nature. Since we are pleasure seekers by nature, we have a propensity for making arrangements for sense gratification all the time. Whoever has a propensity for making sense gratification arrangements purely based on the body and the mind has a duty to perform, because it has to be regulated. He has to perform duties. He has to do whatever he wants to do in a regulated manner, keeping Krishna in the center. By doing so, he would make progress. But for someone who 100% has dedicated himself to the service of the Lord, who seeks no pleasure from the body, he is completely situated in his original conception of being a servant of Krishna. For him, where is the question of regulated duty? There is no question of regulated duty. He is self-realized. Okay, I think what I would do is I will stop here. I'll answer your question. I'll stop here. I'll take these two verses in the subsequent weeks, because there is, the next 3 or 4 verses are connected, so we'll do it together. Okay, so we stopped at 17. Yeah, because.
Yeah, suppose one can claim that, I'm fully Krishna conscious, and then the person can run away from, the duties. So what are the qualities, in that person, we can see that this person is, fully conscious and has, he's not entitled, for the duties, but he's more, towards service also, to Krishna.
Okay, so the question is, what are the qualities of one who is in Samadhi? Samadhistasya. How do they act? What do they do? How can we distinguish from someone who is pretending and from someone who is the reality? The only way we will be able to understand elevated consciousness is for us to be able to achieve such consciousness. It's very difficult to understand who is elevated unless we are on that platform. You understand? Because they will not say they are elevated, and we will never understand that they are elevated because we will not know what is elevation. So, the only way to understand someone who is elevated is to reach there. That's the reason why we don't judge others. Right? What the best we could do is not to fall into the trap of giving up duty for the sake of sense gratification. So, for example, someone might say, I want to give up my family because I want, family life, it doesn't suit me. But in reality, he is not giving up family because it is interfering with Krishna consciousness, or it will be better if he is free of family. He is giving up family because it's inconvenient. So this is passion. This has nothing to do with Shuddha Sattva, transcendental consciousness of a devotee. This is just attachment to the body, where the person feels, oh, this is convenient, so I will do it. If I wear saffron, everybody will respect me, they would give me free, whatever it is. I will do that. Let me just give up this business of, why work, why go and struggle, why make money, so on and so forth. That is false renunciation. Krishna consciousness, we are not concerned with that. We are not concerned with the vehicle. We are concerned with how we are using such things. What is the consciousness within? Right. If you give someone $1 million, a Krishna conscious person, they will not say no. They would say, okay, give me $1 million, I will use it for Krishna. You don't have to get affected by it. If someone says, okay, you have nothing, go live on the road, okay, I will do what I can do. No problem. So the point which I'm trying to make here is that is not easy to judge, but for people who are pretending, they will receive the results of pretending. You cannot cheat Krishna who is within your heart, right? We can cheat outsiders, but we cannot cheat Krishna who is within the heart. We cannot. Any other question?
Really about chanting. You said that when you want to increase the number of rounds that we're doing, we should only do it when we feel that we have taste in the holy name.
That helps.
But then we've also said that real ruchi for the holy name only comes when anartha nivritti is complete. So I'm very confused how do you draw those.
Yeah, we don't want to mix up, because Prabhu,
Yes, Prabhu.
sorry, I was just trying to answer this question here. We don't want to mix up those two activities. What we want to do is we want to understand this more clearly. When I am talking about taste in the initial stages, it essentially means that you have to feel convinced that you want to move forward. The ruchi that we are talking about after Ananta Nivritti is of a completely different nature. There one understands and has developed a very close relationship with the Lord, and that produces a different taste. It is like calling someone whom we love intensely. It's like calling someone when someone has fallen in love. Oh, that name sounds so sweet. Right? That's ruchi. That's completely different from developing a fixed taste in chanting the holy names. How do you do that? By chanting your rounds nicely, and by hearing whatever you chant, what happens is that you would develop an eagerness to increase your rounds. When that eagerness develops, you increase your rounds. If you impose an increase of the rounds without developing an eagerness to increase, just because you want to increase it, you would not be able to maintain it. And what will happen is you will chant malas, 4 malas today, 16 malas tomorrow, come back to 8, go to 12, go to 14, come to 4, come to 2, and one day nothing. So it's like it goes all over the place. Better would be that we chant a fixed number of rounds. Whatever we have chosen, we don't take our foot back. If you have chosen 4 rounds, we don't take our foot back no matter what. At a fixed time, we sit and we chant every day those 4 rounds very sincerely. Then there would be an eagerness. I want to increase. I want to increase because that's the nature of the holy names. The soul is getting purified, they want to increase. Then you increase to 5, increase to 6. Okay, gradually. Then never take your foot back from chanting 6 malas. Then increase to 8, slowly, steadily. Never take your foot back. So this constant gyration, up and down, can throw one out of sadhana. So fixing ourselves and being able to steadily make progress is very beneficial. That is what I was talking about. Anything else? Yes.
I read like Bhakti-Vinod Thakur, if I look at Guru Parampara, I read saying that they chant like 300,000 times a day. How is it possible? Like that's more than 3,000, close to 3,000 days.
300,000 times a day.
What's the question?
The question is, how is it possible to chant 300,000 times a day? Because we hear Bhakti-Vinod Thakur used to chant 300,000 times a day. Hare, 1.
16.
Hare, right? So you have Hare Krishna, 16 words. So in one chant, you have 16 times the repetition of the Lord's names. It's non-different. Okay? So you essentially, Bhakti-Vinod Thakur used to chant 192 malas every day. 192 malas every day he used to chant, and essentially that happens when in a different way, where the ability to concentrate and ability to call out the names is on a completely different level.
More than 300,000.
Yeah, you cannot imitate the acharyas. I'm just saying, we cannot imitate the acharyas, but we'll have to understand that when the ability to concentrate is so good, that is when someone is very pure, they can do it. Haridas Thakur used to constantly chant, because for them there was absolutely very minimal requirements of body, so very little distraction. Srila Bhakti-Vinod Thakur, towards the end of his tenure on this planet, he shut himself away, literally, on the pretext of being paralyzed. Okay? So he used to constantly be in one place and he used to engage in the chanting of the holy names. Constantly. Very few people could understand that he was actually okay, but he was actually chanting constantly because he didn't want to move around, be disturbed and taken away from his bhajan. Right. He used to have a door which was like 7 inches thick, wood, because he had 11 children. You can imagine what 11 children are in the house. So he used to go and he used to shut himself in one room and he used to do his sadhana because it was required. He wrote 100 books. He wrote 100 books and poems. He revived Krishna consciousness and the mission of Lord Chaitanya, revived the entire Mayapur Navadvip Dham, right? Bought for a wonderful son, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Can you imagine? And all of this was accomplished. He was a deputy magistrate. He was the chief administrator of the Jagannath Puri temple. You know what it is? Being the chief administrator of Puri temple. Can you imagine what his duties were? It's unimaginable. Plus he had visitors every day. He used to allocate half hour because people used to come. You know, those days India, even these days I guess, I was just passing by, I wanted to stop. So he used to allocate half hour. You can pass by at 8:30 and you can pass by at 5 o'clock in the evening. You can stop. Because he was such a highly placed situated individual that people used to stop. So completely different level. But yeah, to answer your question, he used to sleep for 2.5 hours less. Anything else? You had a question before this. You forgot?
So we know that when we say, like I've heard before, Bhagwan we say we have 6 qualities. Limitless, limitless, Aishwarya. Actually I don't remember everything.
That's okay.
So in every avatar, like whatever happens, are all the qualities shown or only few are shown?
Only Krishna, all the qualities are shown fully. In others, they come with the full qualities, but they don't display it. So Lord Narasimha, what do you remember of Lord Narasimha? Just give me your experience. What do you remember when I say Lord Narasimha?
So, he obviously very ferocious, lot of
Strength,
and
power,
strength, power, yes,
strength, power.
and
Okay. No, well, strength and power of the six opulences,
ferociousness.
right? One, the devotees of Lord Narasimha would say that he is beautiful too.
Yeah, he's also-
His skin and his body was extremely soft to touch. So he was beautiful in his own way. Lord Narasimha's appearance, he was golden, very majestic, different way. He surely was most knowledgeable, but he didn't display that. Right? He did not display that part, most knowledgeable part, in the sense that he is not known for that. So he is predominantly known for power, he is known for strength. He displayed that. He caught this demon who was so powerful that he had shaken everybody, and he just crushed him. So you have someone else, like for example you have a situation of whom shall I say? Okay, you can say Lord Rama, right? Lord Rama displayed beauty, displayed knowledge, right? Displayed knowledge, Aishwarya. We remember him, but only Krishna. In Krishna, he displays knowledge, he displays renunciation, he displays power, he displays wealth, beauty, all six qualities, right? Fame, all six qualities in full. Krishna, in the sense it is. Yeah, but we don't really quote the Ramayana for like the Bhagavad Gita, do we?
Because they have
Different ways of saying that, but what I'm trying to tell you is that he is not known for this particular thing. He is Maryada Purushottama for the way of acting. He set examples, he set principles in place. So different qualities of the Lord manifest themselves in different avatars. Varaha avatar, he comes as strength, right? Knowledge, but he does not display, what do you call it? The other wealth and so on, other aspects are somewhat subdued.
opulence is not.
Yeah, it is subdued somewhat. It's not very obvious. So only Krishna, he is all attractive. He is Sampurna Bhagavan. So he basically displays all the qualities while he appears, because he is the source of all avatars.
Prabhuji, would it be right to say that Lord Ram does not display the ability to speak lies for the sake of his devotee, like Krishna does?
See, when Krishna is absolute, he can never lie. Whatever he speaks is true because
he goes back on his word.
goes back on his word. Yeah, he can. Yes, you're right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lord Ram does not.
Absolutely. So, depending on which avatars, there are different displays.
Follow-up question. So Lord Chaitanya Prabhu, what qualities he showed?
He showed knowledge, he showed beauty, he showed renunciation, right? Knowledge, beauty, renunciation, fame. It's predominant. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yeah.